What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was Konoha backup plan but became the world's biggest threat? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. The cell was tiny, just 8 feet square, dark save for a single bar of golden light. A single window no larger than his head gave off the scant amount of illumination almost reluctantly. The sky outside was a uniform gray. Hizuka Castle, prison to the most ruthless murderers and criminals, was readying itself for another freezing winter day. And inside his cell Naruto was also cold, so very cold. Naruto felt the urge to shiver, but kept still. He had things to do and moving would only delay him. He'd been here 6 days, and before that 3, and before that a whole week. And each time he was stuck in here it seemed just a little bit colder, the dull stone walls leaching the heat from his body. Then again winter was on its way. Oh how he hated it, hated this cold room, this soulless prison. It had started 4 months ago. 4 entire months. 4 months in which he pondered why. Why had his relatively okay life back in Konoha gone to hell? He remembered it clearly. The look on Tsunade's face as she essentially sent him to prison for something that he couldn't possibly have done. The pathetic useless words Sakura had said in his defense. The way Yamato trapped him without even letting him explain himself. Then he was sent off to this place. At first he thought it was a mistake. No, it had to be a mistake. He'd never been to Kumo. He couldn't find the damn village on an unmarked map. He didn't know what that wreckage looked like. And he was being accused of attacking a cage and killing 3 Jonin? That was fucking impossible. He hadn't even left the village since his sage training. He'd stayed in Konoha to help rebuild after Pain was defeated. How could they accuse him and imprison him for something he simply couldn't have done? It had to be a mistake. It had to be. But he'd started to wonder. 4 months? Could it be that Tsunade meant for him to be here for some reason? He didn't understand it. He was a reasonable person he thought, and when it came to certain things he was very patient too. But what reason could Tsunade have for leaving him to rot in this hellhole? 4 months. A week he could understand fine, maybe even a couple weeks if you pushed it. What if there was some reason why she needed him, something that he couldn't understand? Maybe he was supposed to be unknowing? It could have been that he was here for a mission that he couldn't be completed except for someone on the inside of the prison. That would have made sense. Save for the fact that he was the last person to be sent unknowing on an infiltration mission. But either way he waited and waited, thinking that some agent inside the prison would approach him with a mission. It never happened, other than someone showing up at his solitary confinement window and suggesting he attack the prison warden. He had no contact with any possible friendly agents. He did attack the warden though. Of course he didn't stand a chance in hell fighting a Jonin-level ninja unarmed. Not to mention a chakra restraint seal. Just like he'd expected he was given his just rewards. As in another 5 days in solitary. But he wasn't called the most #1 unpredictable knucklehead ninja for nothing. He had learned a few things in the last 4 months. Fact number 1, someone was after him. As evidenced by the attempted kidnapping his first day here, he'd known someone was trying to have him killed. Or something else just as unpleasant. He didn't know who at first, but now after being here a while he knew it was Lord Mui. The asshole warden himself. What did he want from him though? Well, he'd get to that later. Fact number 2. Sage mode apparently worked despite the seal he wore. He didn't know why, yet when he meditated to pass the time in solitary, only 3 weeks into his imprisonment, nature chakra flowed into him without a hint of pain. He learned not long afterwards that the seal which the warden placed on him didn't do shit about sage chakra. Which was good, but not that good. The plus side was he could now use ninjutsu. The downside was that the seal still burned the ever-loving crap out of him if he got too far away from the castle. And this led to his third discovery. Fact number 3. He had an ally. Once he learned about sage chakra being immune to the seal's effects, he made a second attempt at escaping. He was more successful and at the same time not. He'd managed to get out of the castle well enough and even got to the edge of the high cliffs. But that was when he'd started burning. He'd fallen into the water below, only to be saved by Ryuzetsu. It had been embarrassing to say the least. But that was behind him. Now he knew why he was here at least. Ryuzetsu had explained that she was an Anbu from Kusa, sent here to destroy the Box of Paradise. Also known as the Box of Ultimate Bliss. Supposedly it was an ancient artifact that could grant any one wish. Once provided with enough chakra and a human sacrifice, that is. He'd been framed by someone in Kusa's seed faction in order to use the Kyuubi's chakra to power the box of paradise. That pissed him off, of course, but in reality there was little he could do. Ryuzetsu told him right away that her two teammates who'd been sent on this mission with her were dead. Both had been discovered by the seed faction before they could infiltrate. That meant it was just the two of them to get the job done. So far it hadn't been working too well. After they'd returned to the prison after his near drowning in the harsh waters, he'd almost been kidnapped again. However, this time he was ready. Instead of letting a shadow clone be the bait, he'd used his sage mode to beat his would-be kidnapper into unconsciousness. Then Ryuzetsu brought him to the same cliff he'd jumped off before. And well, Mui's agent went the same way as he had before him, save that this time Ryuzetsu didn't jump in after him. Once that was done with, the two of them proceeded to plan out their next move. He was certain he could destroy the box if given the chance, and Ryuzetsu, after hearing which of the Biju he held, was willing to give him a shot. Provided she was allowed to kill Lord Mui. He'd questioned her as to why she hated the guy so much. And after she told him? Well, suffice to say he was more than willing to let her do her thing. Anyone who would sacrifice his own son and not even mourn their death was a scumbag in his opinion. The bastard deserved everything he got. The plan they came up with was pretty simple, but dependent upon him by its very nature. The thing was, they had severe restrictions. Ryuzetsu was Jonin level, but because of the seal she couldn't use more than a genin level jutsu without being burned alive. It didn't help at all that she was a ninjutsu specialist. He was under the same limit as long as he was using normal chakra. So the first order of business was training. Or more specifically, he was training to bring his mastery of Sage Mode to a whole new level. Before he was imprisoned, Sage Mode lasted only about 5 minutes, which was pathetic. Unless he used one of his big jutsu, he couldn't beat a Jonin in such a tiny amount of time. So again, training. After a month of getting in as many fights as possible and being put in solitary, he could stay in Sage Mode for 15 minutes. Once he'd been doing it for 6 weeks, he could make a shadow clone without burning up at all. His training sped up after that. 2 months into his imprisonment, he could make 6 clones and stay in Sage Mode for nearly 2 hours. It was then that he made a discovery. Something that revolutionized how he saw nature energy and used Sage Chakra. Before then he'd always thought that nature energy balanced with his own chakra evenly, and he was right. As a human using nature energy, his body would naturally strike a balance between nature energy and his own chakra. However, this view was limited. Once he reached a level where he could go into Sage Mode within seconds, he found that he'd breached a hidden barrier inside himself. He started absorbing more nature energy than he had chakra, and yet it was still mixing without causing damage. It was just 1.5 to 1 instead of 1 to 1. This opened up a whole new world to him. At the 9-week mark he'd gone into Sage Mode yet again, intending to absorb enough nature energy to create a 3 to 1 balance. And like a blind man being able to see for the first time in his life, he was able to see. Everything was there. All he had to do was flare his chakra and he could feel everything. Like the Byakugan and the Sharingan put together, he knew everything that happened around him. With his eyes closed and 3 rooms separating them, he could see what a prison guard was doing as if he were right there. It was fucking amazing. He remembered Ryuzetsu's expression when he got her alone to tell her. She hadn't believed him at first, until he went into Sage Mode and told her where the box of paradise was in exacting detail, despite the fact that he'd never been there and that it was 100 feet underground. Suffice to say, she told him to continue his training to see how far he could take this. After all, Mui wasn't going anywhere and he was safe as long as he remained in solitary. That was 2 months ago. Naruto smiled as he was drawn out of his contemplation by the footsteps of the guards coming to get him. His eyes cracked open, taking in his surroundings. However, they were no longer blue. Instead of their usual sapphire, they were a deep glowing liquid gold. No toad-like bar replaced the pupil and no orange pigment surrounded his eyes. Instead, his pupil was simply gone, and around the orbs of molten gold his skin had darkened as if brushed with coal. He glanced to the side. It was like looking at a 3-dimensional schematic of the entire castle. He could see every person, animal, even insect. He could see the prisoners in their cells, the guards going about their duties, and even Lord Mui pacing his office. This was what balancing your chakra 10 to 1 with nature energy was like. He became one with nature to such an extent that he was a part of it. Naruto took note of Ryuzetsu getting into position. It wouldn't be long now. Their plan went like this. 1. He gets himself put into solitary. 2. When he is released, he lets the guard take a shadow clone instead of him. 3. He meets up with Ryuzetsu outside Mui's office. 4. They take down Mui. 5. And finally they head down to the box of paradise and destroy it. Pretty damn simple if he did say so himself. He couldn't help but grin as he thought about the two of them leaving this place at last. He could almost see Ryuzetsu standing with him, looking at this place from the outside. That would be a good feeling. Now if only he could get himself to stop wondering what Ryuzetsu looked like under those drab clothes. Curse Jiraiya for poisoning his mind with such perversion. Even from beyond the grave his sensei mocked him. Naruto sighed and made a henge over himself to hide his altered eyes. The guards were shinobi, but they were poorly trained and unaccustomed to actual resistance from prisoners. They had yet to notice his henge before. They wouldn't notice now. A loud creaking filled his cell as the tiny metal door opened, the guard sticking his head into the room. "Come on out, Uzumaki." Naruto didn't smile as he might have before. He merely nodded and crawled out of the cell. The guard grunted and pulled the door closed, unaware of the fact that Naruto was making a shadow clone behind his back, or that the original was giving him the middle finger. He turned around. "Okay kid, I'm taking you up to the yard and damn it, don't start any fights this time. I swear you've done more solitary than anyone in this prison and you haven't been here a year yet." The clone shrugged. "You know what? I don't care. Why'd I even bother? If you like solitary more than a normal cell, that's your problem. Let's go kid." The clone nodded and followed after the guard. Meanwhile the original was hiding in the shadows far above them, watching as the two figures disappeared from normal sight. Although he was still aware of exactly where they were, he smirked and turned his attention outwards, closing his eyes so that he wouldn't have the warring perspectives to work with. He focused off to his left, searching for Ryuzetsu's chakra signature. He found it easy enough. She was waiting for him, 3 floors down from Mui's office. Originally they'd planned for him to take out the box of paradise by himself while she distracted Mui in the prison yard, but with the massive power boost from his special Sage mode she didn't feel the need to bait Mui. Drawing on his chakra, Naruto took off along the ceiling towards her position. It took him about 10 minutes, avoiding guards and other inmates to reach the prison's main administration building. There he paused. He could sense something at the edges of his awareness. A massive chakra signature that he didn't recognize. "I'll worry about it later." Naruto started forward again, darting out into the open between buildings, then into the cover of the larger structure. He glanced around. Then he realized what he was doing and shook his head. He didn't know why he was being so cautious. He knew there was no one around. Why was he checking for pursuit? Maybe it was just reflex after years training without the sixth sense? Naruto put it out of his mind. Then he dashed into the administration building's main lobby and took a quick left. He darted through the room beyond and up the stairs on the right. His eyes locked onto Ryuzetsu's signature green bandana and he came to a halt. "Took you long enough." The guard wanted to chat. "Fine." She gave him a long, thoughtful stare, her bright blue eyes seeming to hold some unknown emotion. Then she shook her head, seeming to turn her thoughts to the task at hand. "Let's take Mui out and then head for the box. Remember what we discussed?" Naruto nodded. "We take him down together, but you get the final blow." "I know. I get it. Let's finish this already. I want to get the fuck out of here so I can prove my innocence and go home." "Fine with me." Ryuzetsu's lips quirked upwards in a rare smile. "Good luck, Naruto." Yuta Ryu-chan, her cheeks tinged pink. "I keep telling you not to call me that. And I told you I'm going to keep calling you that no matter what you say." He grinned. "Come on, time's a wastin'." Ryuzetsu grunted and they turned their attention upwards. This fight needed to be fast. Both of them were still marked by Mui's seal. And while Naruto could easily take him down now, if Mui got the chance they'd both be smoking piles of ash. Naruto glanced at her again, his worry for her coming to the forefront of his mind again. "We have to hit him hard and fast, you know." "I know," she snarled, not wanting to voice her thoughts to her blonde partner. "We're both dead if he uses his jutsu even once. If we give him the time to make even a single hand seal, he can kill both of us by activating these fucking seals." Let's go. She nodded and they both started running up the stairs, keeping their steps silent. The two of them ascended the 3 floors to Mui's office, eventually stopping at his door. Naruto flared his chakra, focusing his attention on the warden within. No reaction, good. Mui didn't seem to have heard them. Naruto was once again thankful that normal shinobi couldn't sense sage chakra being used. His eyes slid to the side and he nodded fractionally to Ryuzetsu, giving her the all-clear. He's doing paperwork, Naruto mouthed at her, receiving a nod in return. Ryuzetsu held up a hand with 3 fingers. 3, 2, 1. Naruto drew on his sage chakra and launched a punch at the door. It exploded into kindling, showering the room beyond with shards of wood and wrought iron. Inside, Mui was thrown back by the concussive wave of air that followed the blow. He crashed into the bookshelf behind him. His face, chest, and arms were skewered by several large spears of wood, but he paid them no mind. Instead, he turned his attention to whoever his attackers were. Ryuzetsu was suddenly on his desk, kunai flying straight at his face. Mui jerked his head to the side at the last second and drew his own blade. Then, before he had a chance to react appropriately to Ryuzetsu, Naruto's fist was in his gut. Mui spat blood and both attackers registered the sound of bones snapping. Naruto. Damn it, he's mine. The blonde ninja didn't respond. Something was wrong, and even as Mui flew backwards into the far wall he realized what it was. Mui's chakra signature was different from this man's. This wasn't Mui. Ryuzetsu bolted past him, intent on finishing him off. The imposter, however, didn't need to be finished off. He was already dead. Ryuzetsu's kunai sank deep into pale flesh, a roar of fury tearing itself from her lips. Mui was no longer Mui. The man who'd disguised himself as the warden was much shorter, bald, and… that bastard. He tricked us. Naruto looked down at the man he'd just killed, feeling a little queasy. Sensing someone's death through the flow of nature wasn't exactly a pleasant experience. He forced the feeling down and took a deep breath. Sorry Ryu-chan, I only recognized his chakra signature was different when I hit him. The guy's chakra signature was too close to tell them apart. He must have been an expert at disguise. She shouted and threw a fist into the wall, furious at being deceived. Shit, he must have had a body double all this time. Without taking his eyes off the fallen man, he put an arm around her shoulders trying to calm her down. Easy there Ryu-chan. The guy was using some kind of advanced transformation jutsu. I'll locate the real Mui right away. A voice from behind froze the blood in their veins. There's no need for that boy. It's all over. Naruto whirled around, Rasengan already spinning on his palm. Then his entire body spontaneously combusted. He saw 4 figures standing there even as his agonized cry was cut short by a hand snapping into the side of his neck. He fell to the floor, everything from his neck down suddenly numb. The wall and the corpse sagging against it were all he could see. He couldn't move. He couldn't get up and fight. Behind and above him heard Ryuzetsu shout in pain. Heard the crash of glass shattering. And then a dull echoing boom. Then someone other than Lord Mui was speaking. Deactivate the seal for now Mui. That one won't bother us for now. Besides, you will need your strength and your chakra to open the box of paradise. Very well. Another voice cut through the air, deeper and more guttural than the others. We must go. The seal I applied to the Jinchuriki's neck will only keep him paralyzed for a short time. The ritual is prepared. It is time to finish this. Naruto tried to move, attempted to call out, but couldn't as something or someone lifted his limp body. His mind was racing. What had happened? Had Mui known their plans all along? That should have been impossible. With his mastery of Sage Mode he should have been able to sense anyone spying on his and Ryuzetsu's meetings. And how had they concealed themselves from him in the first place? Knock him out Gokuro. It's better if he is unconscious anyway. The chakra will flow easier that way. Naruto's eyes couldn't even move from their current position. He couldn't even flinch away from the coming blow. All he could do was watch as the butt end of a kunai came down on his head. Pain exploded through his forehead, and was followed by a swift and inky darkness. He knew no more. Moroi sighed as he stood upon one of the highest buildings in Hazuka Castle. It was almost time. The last 6 months had been quite troublesome for him. And the last 4 especially so. That boy, Naruto Uzumaki, was one hell of a ninja. From what he heard, the boy was being considered for S rank in several bingo books after he supposedly fought against the leader of the Akatsuki one-on-one, and come out on top. That was incredible enough, but to be able to do what he'd been doing here at Hazuka Castle was simple and sane. The kid was strong enough to make a shadow clone even while marked with Mui's seal, could apparently use Sage mode from what he'd seen thus far, and had stealth that was simply off the charts. If he himself hadn't been a powerful sensor type, finding the blonde-haired hero of Konoha would have been impossible. He was glad Naruto was the kind of kid he was. Otherwise he'd be dead. A few months ago, when Naruto had first been brought to the prison, he kidnapped him and brought him to Mui. Or well, so he may or may not have been tricked into bringing a shadow clone. Regardless, he'd failed that first attempt. The next time the blonde was kidnapped, it had been one of Mui's other agents. He'd watched Naruto carrying the guy away from the castle late the same night. It could have been him if Mui trusted him enough to make a second attempt. That guy was never seen or heard from again, and he had the uncomfortable impression that the poor idiot had been thrown off the long cliffs. Especially since Naruto wasn't really known for killing his opponents. Probably just knocked him out and threw him over. Not the best way to go, but certainly far from the worst. Moroi stiffened as he felt a massive surge of chakra from below him. Tisk, seems like they started the ritual. Better signal the reinforcements. He clasped his hands together and gathered what chakra he could. Let's try this. Hopefully I don't burn myself alive for using too much chakra. Lightning style. Lightning signal. He converted his gathered chakra into his main element and then launched it skyward. A golden bolt of lightning arced upwards into the sky, detonating high overhead. The explosion would hopefully be enough to alert the forces Kumo and Konoha had put together for the occasion. Hopefully. If not, well, shit would hit the fan really quick. That probably wouldn't happen though. Hopefully. Naruto awakened slowly, painfully, to the sound of buzzing machinery and someone's unsteady breathing. His vision was foggy and a harsh light shone down from above, making him want to cover his eyes. But he still couldn't move. Damn it, what happened? Where am I? He gritted his teeth and forced his head to rise, just enough to see the room around him. It was then he felt the ghostly touch of gloved hands pressing to either side of his chest. At the same time, his flesh broke out in goosebumps as a strange, unpleasant chakra started to leach into his skin. And there, standing over him, hands running back and forth as he did something to him, was Lord Mui. Naruto jerked even as the older man grimaced. Almost there. What the hell is he doing to me? Naruto drew on his chakra, preparing to break free of whatever jutsu kept him trapped. Yet he was too late. Mui had already finished whatever he was trying to do. Naruto cringed as he felt the seal on his abdomen activate, the black kanji script glowing red hot. Then, not a second later, he registered a dark presence stirring nearby. He knew at once it was the box of paradise. The artifact was radiating a power so dark nature itself recoiled from it. And now that he was this close, he could finally feel something alive within the chakra-laced stone. Something ancient and dark. Something evil. And then, like a bloody red torrent, chakra exploded from him. Fuck. Pain like nothing he'd experienced rippled through every nerve of his body while a mix of his and the Kyuubi's chakra rushed out and towards the box of paradise. He thrashed, bellowing as he felt the seal holding him down snap. To his right, Mui stared, transfixed by the crimson tide of chakra. Naruto gritted his teeth to prevent another scream from tearing loose, dispelling the clone which had been sent up above to the prison courtyard. Nature energy rushed into him and he formed a Rasengan. It was hard, like trying to swim against the current of a great river. He pushed through the pain and, tossing it in Mui's direction with a mighty heave, managed to break the man's concentration. The sudden attack also seemed to cut off the ritual mere seconds after the box collected enough of his chakra to activate. Mui was surprised by his attack but still managed to dodge out of the way. He leapt backwards out of range, probably realizing how dangerous an angry Jinchuriki would be unsealed. Naruto rolled off the table, nature energy coursing through him at a prodigious pace. He went still for a few precious seconds to make sure it didn't turn him to stone. Then he stood up, cringing as the pain still lancing through his torso. It was a good thing his clone had been gathering nature chakra. Otherwise he'd be in pretty rough shape and in no position to fight a Jonin like Mui. But now, he had a chance. Hey, asshole, You happy now? Mui stood in front of the glowing door to the box of paradise, tired himself but recovering quickly. It's extraordinary, the amount of chakra you Jinchuriki possess. You bastard! Naruto glared at Mui, preparing to attack again. Yet even as he took a step forward his knees buckled beneath him as his body tried to balance an overwhelming amount of natural energy with his depleted reserves. He bit his lip hard enough to bleed and released a large portion of the energy. He was used to balancing it against the full volume of his Jinchuriki reserves. Currently he only had a couple jonin worth to work with. Damn it, he'd need to be careful with this fight. He raised his head to look at his enemy, wondering how he could defeat the man without being branded with that seal again. Grr, for right now I need to keep him talking if I can. The longer I can delay fighting him up close, the more chakra I can gather. Speaking of which, Naruto sent a mental query to the Kyuubi and received no answer. Well, that sucks. No help from Fox today. Maybe next time. For now I need to stall. Naruto pointed an accusing finger at the warden. What kind of man would murder his own son just to open that thing? Were you really that desperate to have your wish granted? It is all for the future of Kusa. Don't use the future as an excuse. Mui looked away from him, towards the box of paradise. It doesn't matter. It will all be over soon. Naruto's eyes narrowed and he tensed his legs, preparing to attack. At least that's what he was going to do. His mind changed a second later when the entire cavern shook. The violent jarring motion would have sent both of them to their knees had they not channeled chakra to their feet. Mui's gaze was stuck to the grinning face that was even now breaking free of the cavern wall. It spun slowly, pulling away and rising. The two of them stumbled as the entire cavern gave sudden lurch. Naruto realized what the box of paradise was doing and gave a strangled shout of surprise. Shit, I need to get up there before he can try to open it. He turned, already knowing the way out of the chamber, and bolted for the surface. He leapt through the rough-hewn cave until he came to the exit. His Sage Mode enhanced strike tore the solid iron door off its hinges and he was through an instant later. Without looking he knew that he didn't have time to go up the stairs all the way to the top. And besides that he didn't dare let Mui catch him in such an enclosed space. So instead of leaping upwards he darted to the side, running up the stairs until his enhanced senses perceived he was above ground. At that point he turned, gathering his chakra into a sphere and thrusting it into the wall to his right. The massive Rasengan tore through the stone as if it wasn't there, creating a tunnel almost as tall as he was. Then he forced it to destabilize, the sudden change causing the sphere to explode outwards. With a deafening boom his jutsu annihilated everything in front of it, creating a hole through the wall to the outside. He peered through the dust cloud and is barely able to make out the prison's great main courtyard. However, the sound of pursuit made his glance behind him and down the stairs. It seemed Mui had come after him. Well, that didn't take long. Naruto wasn't about to fight the man here though. With that in mind he channeled Sage Chakra to his legs and threw himself through the hole and out into open air. Mid-jump he created 3 more clones, directing them to go off and gather more nature energy in case he needed it. He took in the area around him as he landed. The great courtyard of Hazuka Castle was filled with inmates, all of whom were now either looking at him or towards the box of paradise as it rose from the ground near the courtyard's center. Naruto glanced behind him just in time for Mui to land. Hey, Mui, now we're out in the open, you're done for. I'm not letting you open that box for nothing. He dropped into a fighting stance and summoned 2 more shadow clones. You're not even getting close to that box. Mui's expression was one of distaste. You may find that hard, Jinchuriki. Naruto's eyes went wide as he sensed 4 large chakra signatures closing in on him from all sides. He recognized them from when he'd been captured before. Not this time. He and his clones leapt up even as the 4 masked ninja landed. 2 huge Rasengan formed in his hands an instant before his clones hurled him back down in the midst of his 4 opponents. A short agonized cry heralded at least 1 enemy down, but Naruto soon found himself fighting a losing battle against the 3 remaining masked Kusa ninja. He ducked and weaved, trying to put distance between him and them, but they were hemming him in. Damn it, and Mui had already destroyed his clone and was walking quickly towards the box of paradise. A roar of fury escaped him and he allowed one of the masked ninja to stab him in the shoulder. And just like he'd done to Kabuto all those years ago, he used it as an opportunity to deal some damage of his own. Except this time the circumstances were different. He hadn't been in Sage mode back then. The masked man's blade shattered on his diamond-hard skin even as his Naruto's fist broke every bone in his upper torso, sending him flying away like a human rag doll. The scream that followed seemed oddly satisfying for some reason. And then there were two. Possibly realizing they couldn't fight him in close quarters, both ninja tried to leap out of the way. However, they couldn't account for the Sage chakra coating his strikes and extending his range. Naruto's foot missed its mark, yet the wave of natural energy struck true. It caught the slower of them in the face, snapping her neck back with a sickening crack. He didn't bother to watch her body collapse to the ground in a heap. His concentration was already on the last ninja. To be blunt, he didn't last long. Naruto gathered nature chakra around his fist and swung. His opponent dodged, or at least tried to. He did manage to avoid the fist. Just not the freight train of condensed nature energy behind it. The titanic blow broke his mask along with the face and skull beyond. Naruto grimaced in distaste as the man slumped to the ground, dead before his blood could spill across the stone. Then his head whipped to the side, his eyes searching for Mui. Damn it all to hell. The bastard was already there opening the box. He broke into an all-out sprint with the intent of ramming Mui into the next dimension. His speed eating up the distance between them, but even with Sage mode he was just too slow. Mui had been given just enough time to arrive at the box and open it. Naruto wasn't about to let him make his wish though. Even if it means breaking my promise to Ryu-chan, I can't let him do it. Mui didn't see the punch coming. All he could see was the box of paradise, the salvation he'd been searching for all these years since his son had died. It had never been his intention to sacrifice Muku. His son was only supposed to provide enough chakra to open the box, not to give everything he had and more. He wasn't supposed to be sucked inside and devoured whole. This box was no longer the salvation of the hidden grass. This box would now give back what had been taken from him. He would wish to see his son again. Or not, because in the very instant that the box of paradise activated a fist, feeling like a boss summons kick, sent him into the next world, literally. He was dead before he registered the pain of Naruto's Sage mode enhanced strike breaking every bone in his body. To those watching it seemed like Naruto's attack liquefied the warden's skeletal structure. One moment he was about to make his wish and the next he was flying away, limbs and head twisting in ways they were never meant to move. The body landed in a crumpled heap, broken and oozing blood. Naruto watched too, his expression a mixture of contempt and disgust. He hadn't wanted to kill Mui. The man might have deserved it for what he'd done, but it was Ryuzetsu's right to kill him. But he had to do it. To prevent him from using the box of paradise. There was no telling what a man like that would have done with it. Naruto. He turned in time to see Ryuzetsu limping towards him, her face set in a mask of rage and relief. Ryu-chan, are you okay? He darted towards her, stopping just before she could take a wild swing for his face. What happened? You idiot, you promised you would let me kill him, for Muku. I couldn't alright? He was about to make a wish on that thing. Do you have any idea what could have happened? What if he wished for enough power to destroy entire nations? I couldn't let him do that even if it meant breaking my promise to you. I'm sorry Ryu-chan. She looked at him for a long moment. Betrayal seemed to be twisting her face. Then she shouted angrily and slapped him across the face. Ow, you stupid blonde nutcase. Then she hugged him. He swallowed hard, blushing as her arms squeezed tight. He wasn't used to this sort of thing from her. Ryu-chan? Don't you ever do something like that again, she growled. And don't you ever break a promise to me again? I'll kill you if you do. Oh, okay. She drew back, holding him at arm's length. It almost looked like she going to cry. You promise? Yeah, I promise Ryu-chan, on both things. He smiled and scratched the back of his head nervously. You can count on me, ya no. Good. She hugged him again, resting her head on his bare chest. I'm glad you're safe. Did they hurt you opening the box? I remember watching Muku scream when they used his chakra to try and open it. They did, but at least Mui didn't get his wish. He wrapped his arms around her, wishing that he wasn't on the receiving end of such affection when he was still covered in blood. Though she didn't seem to be paying attention to that. His blush deepened as he remembered how many times he'd wanted to hold Sakura like this. He glanced over her shoulder and noted that literally everyone was watching their little reunion. Ryu-chan? She took a deep breath, her face still buried in his chest, and didn't answer. Ryu-chan, you know everyone is staring, right? Abruptly she jerked away from him, her face burning crimson. Idiot, don't say things like that. He couldn't help but smile as she turned to look around at the prisoners. Most of them were watching him and Ryuzetsu with something akin to wonder. Then again, he had just killed the warden in front of everyone. He guessed they had every right to be shocked. Ryuzetsu scowled and opened her mouth to shout something when a wave of foreboding washed over the whole courtyard. She and Naruto whipped around just in time to see something emerge from the box of paradise. Muku? At first glance Naruto thought it was some kind of ghost. That's just how pale he was. But he didn't focus on what the boy looked like for long. His eyes went wide as he finally got a sense for the pale youth. That wasn't Muku. That thing wasn't even human. It was an abomination and nature itself was recoiling from it, revolted by its mere existence. That thing felt more evil than Kurama at his worst. Muku, is that you? Ryuzetsu started to run toward the box and its manifestation, a desperate look in her eyes. He stopped her before she managed to get 10 steps, holding her and anchoring his feet to the ground with chakra. Ryu-chan, that's not who you think it is. That's not a person. It's just a shell filled with dark chakra. No, it's Muku. I see him. He's right there. Let go of me, Naruto-kun. Naruto blinked at what she'd just said. Did she just call me? But she'd already pulled free of him and was racing forwards. Naruto leapt after her. Ryu-chan, no. It was too late. She threw herself at the creature, the thing she thought was her long-lost best friend, and his arm pierced right through her. An agonized shout wrenched free of Naruto as the creature masquerading as Muku tossed her to the side, and smiled. Well, that was easy, it taunted. Are you next? Naruto couldn't believe what he'd just seen. Ryuzetsu, the girl he'd spent the last 4 months planning with and getting to know, the one who'd saved his life, the beautiful girl he'd grown to care for as much or more than his friends back in Konoha, was lying in a rapidly expanding pool of her own blood. It did something to him. Standing here now, it was like the battle with pain all over again. He was watching Hinata being impaled, bleeding out on the hard earth, Nagato's puppet standing over her uncaring. He was seeing someone precious to him dying in front of him. Naruto's shocked expression faded, his eyes going dark as he felt the string of his self-control strain and snap. A howl like a wounded animal rent the air and Naruto charged, crossing the distance between him and the box's manifestation in a heartbeat, fully intending to grab him and throw him bodily into the portal behind him. The creature's surprise was profound as it was, quite suddenly, hurled backwards. Naruto's hand was wrapped around its throat and a hand, cloaked in crimson chakra, was buried deep in his chest, clawed fingers wrapped snugly around his heart. And then the two of them vanished into the box of paradise. When Naruto woke, it was to the sound of something hard clicking on stone. His eyes opened slowly and he found himself gazing at a gray stone ceiling, one that seemed to have ripples flowing across it, as if the stone was the surface of an eerily calm lake. It was strange. What had he just been doing? Ryu-chan. Naruto bolted upright, gathering his chakra to attack, and stopped. Hello Naruto-san. I see you're finally awake. Who? The blonde shinobi was looking at the very same man who'd impaled Ryuzetsu, except he wasn't as old. As opposed to someone his own age, he was looking at a 14-year-old in the traditional Kusagakure ninja uniform. Are you Muku? That is the name I went by in life. The boy replied calmly. These days I go by the name Shuei. Sit down Naruto-san, we have much to talk about. Naruto looked around the small room they were in, wondering what the hell was going on. And then he remembered what he'd done prior to falling unconscious. He'd actually entered the box of paradise. Oh Kami, am I trapped in here? How do I get out? Ryu-chan is out there injured. I have to get out and help her. Sit down Naruto-san, I will explain everything. For now all you need know is that Ryuzetsu is alive. Currently you are within the box of paradise. What? Allow me to explain. The box of paradise is a tool created by the god Tsukiyomi for his own amusement. It is less an actual object and more a concept given form. The box of paradise embodies two things, desire and infinity. Naruto hesitantly took a seat opposite the one who had once been Muku. So, what happened? You entered the box, as anyone wishing to make a wish must do. Now that you are here, all that remains is to make a wish. Wait, didn't Mui already make a wish? I mean you, or something like you left the box. Did he just want to see you alive again? No. What do you mean no? Naruto leaned forward. I don't understand. What's going on here? Then allow me to explain, Naruto-san. The box of paradise may grant any wish. All that is required is enough energy to activate in a human sacrifice. Then, you provided the power to open it and I provided the needed sacrifice 10 years ago. Although 3 other people have been sacrificed before me, each of them lacking the chakra needed to open the door to this place. Naruto decided to be silent and let the boy explain everything. He didn't know what was going on here, but the boy said Ryuzetsu was alright. He didn't know how to get out and make sure of that, so for now he would have to take him at his word. Besides, this Muku was not the one who had attacked Ryuzetsu. He could feel that much. The box of paradise possesses a limitless amount of energy, a gift from the gods themselves. It will grant 1 wish for every life sacrificed to it before it is opened. Then whoever desires to make a wish must enter the box themselves. If they are not mentally or physically strong enough to survive the passage, then their souls are taken as an additional sacrifice and the box closes again. So, you survived entering here, now you must make a wish. Or to be more specific, you must make 4 wishes. You cannot leave until you do so. Furthermore, while you are inside here, Satori, the one who attacked Ryuzetsu, is outside fighting your friends, and he is currently winning. What? Naruto almost sprang from his seat, only for Muku to make a calming gesture. The sooner you make your wishes and satisfy the conditions given by the box of paradise, the sooner you may leave, and the less damage Satori will do outside. Naruto grimaced and sat down. Fine, what are the rules for these wishes? Tell me, so I can get out of here and help Ryu-chan. Very well, you have 4 wishes. Each wish has certain restrictions. You may not make a wish that directly affects the box itself in any way. You may not make a wish that interferes with the desires of any of the other gods. You may only wish for things that are finite, which means that anything limitless, such as immortality or infinite power, are out of the question. Last of all, you may not wish for more wishes. Naruto blinked. Additionally, there is no need to state the way in which your wish is intended. I am currently reading your thoughts and I will understand exactly how you desire the wish to be fulfilled. I see. Naruto shifted. Can I ask some questions? I am bound to withhold some information, Naruto-san. However, since I know who you are and I respect you for befriending Ryuzetsu, I am inclined to help you as much as I can. Naruto nodded. What happens when I'm done making my wishes? You will be allowed to leave. Satori will then return and the box will close, unable to be opened for another 100 years. What is Satori? Satori is the guardian of the box of paradise. He is there to prevent anyone else from entering the box while the wisher is inside. However, over the millennia the box has existed, he has become a hateful entity who seeks the destruction of the world. Therefore, instead of merely guarding the box, he kills and destroys everything he can until forced back inside. Can he be killed? No. If he is defeated on the outside, he will merely manifest here a short time later at full strength. However, if he is killed, the box will close for 100 years, unable to be used again until then. So I have 4 wishes that I have to make before I can leave, and this Satori creature will attack everything in sight until I finish. That is correct. Naruto leaned back in his seat, staring at Muku, feeling completely dumbfounded. I have no idea what to wish for. Muku's expression changed for the first time, a small pained but friendly smile appearing. I would advise only 3 things. Don't make generalized wishes. I will not twist your wish in a negative way, however, a generalized wish such as world peace, for instance, could have countless negative consequences that are unseen. Second, I would advise only making wishes where you know and understand the variables involved, which would also mean wishing for something rather specific. And last, don't wish for something against the laws of nature. Such things as bringing the dead back to life are possible, but can have terrible results in the long run. Naruto bit his lip, thinking about it. I would also advise being quick about it, Naruto-san. I may be your ally while you are here, but I cannot stop Satori from killing your friends. The one known as Yamato was almost killed just now. But what should I wish for? Naruto still felt shell-shocked. And why the hell was Captain Yamato out there? He should have been back at the village. I cannot make a wish for you. That is strictly against the rules I am bound to follow. Fuck. Naruto was starting to sweat. I can't wish for something generalized like you said. I don't know how it would affect everyone else. I need to wish for something I actually know about so I know how it will affect me. I wouldn't bring the dead back to life. That's just wrong, but what do I want? I may be able to read your thoughts, but I cannot suggest anything for you more than I already have. I can only suggest that you hurry. Naruto clenched his fists. My first wish. My first wish. What is something that will help me? Come on, think, damn it. What can I wish for that I'll never have? Something that will make me stronger. What are things that Ero Sennin always told me I would never have? Oh, that's it. Naruto met Muku's dark eyes. I have my first wish. Very well. What is it? I wish for perfect chakra control. Muku smirked ever so slightly. A wise wish for someone like you, and something that requires little explanation and has no real negative consequences. Muku closed his eyes. Your first wish is granted. What is the second? Naruto scrunched his face up in thought, wondering what he should choose. He needed to choose something that made himself stronger. Anything else might have unknown problems that he wouldn't know about. Although, he could wish for someone else to have power too. But the question for that would be if they would want it? No, he was better off just wishing for himself, or I wish that Ryu-chan had an advanced healing factor even better than mine. Muku smiled for real this time. Your wish is granted, and thank you for thinking of her in that way. I'm glad she found someone like you. Naruto blushed, realizing that Muku was still reading his thoughts even now. He dropped his eyes to the ground, already thinking what his next wish. What is your third wish? Give me a sec, I'm thinking it all through. Of course, but be quick. Satori is fighting the Hachibi Jinchuriki and winning. Once he is finished with him there will be little to stop him killing your friends. Naruto had closed his eyes, nodding to himself. Again, part of him was wondering why in Kami's name the Jinchuriki of the Hachibi was here. Had that been the massive chakra signature he'd sensed earlier? Shit, he was getting off track again. Okay, I think I have it. Very well. The blonde Jinchuriki looked up, his eyes opening. He needed to be stronger. To protect everyone he cared about. And if he already had the chakra control and the chakra capacity from the Kyuubi, there was just one thing he was missing. The thing that every other enemy he ran into seemed to have. A bloodline, a special power that no one else could copy. Like Neji's Byakugan or Sasuke's Sharingan. In other words, a dujutsu. If there was one thing he knew would give him an edge, it was that. But not just any dujutsu. After all, if he was going to wish, he might as well wish big. I wish to have the Rinnegan. Muku nodded. You wish is granted. Naruto stiffened as he felt a strange sensation behind his eyes. And then pain exploded through him, rendering him completely insensate. He fell out of the chair, gasping as his system all but went into shock. And he stayed that way for a long time, for how long he didn't know. But when he at last climbed back into the chair, blood was trickling from his eyes and Muku seemed somewhat panicked. You need to make your last wish now, Naruto-san. Or Ryuzetsu will die. The Hachibi Jinchuriki has been defeated and the rest of the ninja outside are barely holding Satori off. Groaning in pain, Naruto managed to nod and raise his head, focusing unsteadily on Muku. I wish, hurry. Naruto slumped forward, almost falling unconscious again. Black shadows were rapidly descending over his field of vision. Wishing for the Rinnegan, it seemed, was a poor choice and he was paying for it now. He could barely think. His thoughts were woozy and jumbled. Rather like how Jiraiya described a bad hangover now that he thought about it. He grimaced as the room seemed to spin and he made his wish. Muku blinked in slight shock and then nodded. Your wish is granted. Naruto chuckled, unable to stop himself, and fell out of the chair again. He idly wondered just how much damage was done to his body by wishing for the Rinnegan. Had it caused, geez, what was it called? Drain damage? Damn it. He wished the floor would stop dancing already. A moment later Naruto felt himself being tossed? Something like that. He wasn't sure. Everything was so blurry and the edges of his vision were black and splotchy. He blinked as something came into view. It was large and, like everything right now, rather fuzzy. Whatever it was white or maybe silver. He didn't know. Maybe it was blue. Was it blue? That would be weird. Why would it be weird? He hadn't the faintest idea. How, right? And what was with all the shouting? It was complete gibberish. Was he supposed to understand this shit? Were they talking with marbles in their mouths? What, foo. Naruto blinked again, but everything had gone completely black. Something hit his face and he groaned, trying to strike out at what had done it. Then something warm and soft was pressing against his cheek. Someone was speaking to him. He was pretty sure of that now, but he was still so confused. And tired too. He just realized that he was tired, incredibly, amazing, exhausted. The last thought he had before he fell into blissful unconsciousness was, "What did I wish for again?" Consciousness returned to Naruto slowly in fits and starts. The first thing he registered was the fact that he was quite comfortable, lying in what he assumed was a bed. It was soft and warm, something that almost lulled him back to sleep. And to be honest, it did lull him back to sleep, though only for a short time. When next he woke, it was to voices. Someone was speaking close by. The speaker's voice seemed oddly familiar too, like he'd heard it often before. It was female and bossy, and it was Ino. Yep, had to be Ino. Naruto's nose twitched then, and he was able to pick up the distinctive and unpleasant scent of antiseptics. He was in a hospital, great. He despised hospitals with a passion built on years of repeat visits. But at least he was in a comfortable bed in a hospital. It was better than waking up in a prison cell again. Then there was another voice, male, drawling, and definitely Kakashi. He grimaced, wishing he could go back to sleep. Damn it, they were too loud. Couldn't they tell how tired he was? Naruto shifted in a vain attempt to block out the noise. However, it was to no avail. It seemed the world was conspiring against him, and he hadn't even rolled out of bed yet. Kakashi, he's awake. Guys, he's finally up. A loud groan of irritation escaped him as he grabbed his pillow and threw it at whoever had just spoken, someone with the overly obnoxious voice of Kiba Inuzuka. Noisy bastard. I don't think he's happy to be awake quite yet. Naruto finally opened his eyes, sitting up and glaring at the room at large. Geez, can't a guy get a bit of sleep these days? Then he rubbed at his eyes, trying to clear away the haze. Kiba, for it was his dog-loving friend, spoke again as he did so. Man, that's all you've been doing. Been asleep for the last week and a half. Kiba, it was Kakashi again. Shut up and go get the others. They'll want to see him. Fine, I'll be back. Naruto dropped his arm at last and looked around the room again. A week? What are you guys talking about? Those who were currently there smiled back at him. On one side of the room was Kiba's team minus their sensei Kurenai. Then on the other side Ino was there along with Choji. Although Shikamaru was absent for some reason. Lazy bastard was probably off watching clouds. Not that he couldn't go for some cloud watching right about now. It beat the hell out of prison cells and hospital beds. Last of all, Kakashi was resting against the wall opposite from him. You couldn't really tell that he was smiling, but Naruto just knew from experience. That irritating arch of the eyebrow made him want to break his face in. Ino smirked and leaned forward. Well, Naruto, when everyone came to Hazuka Castle, you were already inside the box of paradise. And that thing was destroying everything in sight. We fought it for a long time, but no matter what we threw at it, nothing worked. Finally, when we were out of tricks, it was about to start killing us. Then you tumbled out of the box of paradise and the monster just disappeared back inside. Really? Satori went back inside? I guess he was right. Naruto groaned and fell back into bed, memories assaulting him. Man, for a moment there I thought everything was just a wild dream and I'd exhausted myself training again. Nope, she replied cheerfully. That being said, there's a lot of things we still don't know. Who do you mean by Satori? Is that the monster we were fighting? He nodded. How do you know? Kakashi waved Ino off. Naruto was glad. He was still very tired. Never mind that for now, Ino. Naruto, are you feeling alright? He trailed off for a while, attempting to put it all into words. The last 4 months of his life were quickly coming back to him, each memory more painful than the last. I'm just trying to digest everything. Like, Naruto looked up at the ceiling. If he were to summarize all of his feeling at the moment, he'd need a good 5 minutes to list them all off. But chief among them were anger, joy, disappointment, and confusion. I'm not really sure how to put it. So much happened. I don't even know why you were all there. And that was truly the most confusing part. How the hell did they all show up there in the first place? He'd been in that thrice damned prison for months. Almost half a year of his life lost to that hellhole. Yet the moment he was inside the box of paradise, everyone was suddenly there to help? What the fuck was wrong with this picture? Kakashi walked over and sat down on the bed. I can explain that. You see, Konoha and Kumo have been working together for a while now. Ever since we received word about the box of paradise being rediscovered. When someone framed you for attacking the Raikage, we could have refused the charges. However, we knew from the legend that the box required an immense amount of chakra to open. Naruto sat up suddenly, one eye twitching madly. So, you let them take me without telling me anything at all? Well, think about it like this. Kumo has been trying to infiltrate Hizuka Castle since they learned of the box. But only one of their agents ever managed to get in undiscovered. Your lack of knowledge was required to make it all believable. After all, what kind of spy would do everything in their power to escape the place they're supposed to infiltrate? Also, we knew that since they wanted your chakra, that you would be able to get closer to the box than anyone else. Oh, Kakashi nodded and gave Naruto one of his classic eye smiles. Good, you see Naruto's fist buried itself in Kakashi's gut, making the Jonin's lone eye go wide. There was a muted snap. Several actually. And Ino, Hinata, and Choji all watched in horror as Kakashi let out a muted gasp. Then fell off the bed twitching and holding his belly in agony. Shino watched as well, but his expression made no change. Why, Naruto? Kakashi groaned. That, Naruto growled, is for letting me get taken to a fucking prison for 4 months without telling me a goddamn thing. And don't worry, I'm going to be having a talk with Ba-chan about things like respect and trust. Kakashi whimpered and nodded, still curled into a ball on the floor, nursing half a dozen broken ribs. Naruto eyed his sensei with disdain, taking no small pleasure in getting back at him. Hell, with what he'd been put through. All the anxiety, the self-doubt, the wondering if his friends and family even cared for him? Kakashi was fortunate to get off so light. If he really wanted to get even, he didn't even know how he'd get even. He'd need to consult Shikamaru just to come up with something that might work. Naruto-kun? He glanced back at his 4 friends and his anger faded. Yeah? What is it, Hinata-chan? She blushed and he was reminded of her confession. Damn it, he hadn't thought about that tender issue for months. One would think he'd have plenty of time to ponder the question. But he'd had more important things to worry about. Still, he felt kind of bad about it. Well, are you not feeling well? A smile tugged at his lips and he nodded. I'm still a little tired, but other than that I'm fine. I'll be back to normal in no time. She nodded, twiddling her fingers as she tried to meet his eyes. Anyo, that's good. Naruto sighed and crossed his legs on the bed, keeping his eyes on hers. He had an odd feeling in the back of his mind. Was it guilt? He hesitated, still watching Hinata as he tried to figure out what he wanted to say and how to put it into words. Finally his smile returned. Oi, Hinata-chan. She looked back up. Why? Yes? I haven't forgotten, ya no. Her blush, which before had been minor, went crimson. She swallowed audibly. Thank you, Naruto-kun. But you don't have to answer right away. I know. I just wanted you to know I was still thinking about it. He scratched the back of his neck nervously. I feel kinda guilty not mentioning it all this time. Sorry. She looked away. It's alright, Naruto-kun. Don't feel bad about it. Ino and Choji looked between them quickly as if trying to figure out what was going on. Choji was clueless, but Ino figured it out after a few moments. Her eyes bugged out as she stared at Hinata. You confessed? I'll be damned. Tell me, girl, when did this happen? Hinata recoiled away from the gossip-loving blonde. Anyo, Ino-san, she told me how she felt about me the day Nagato and Konan attacked the village. Why do you think I went berserk, Ino-chan? I just had the first person in my whole life tell me they loved me, and then she was impaled right in front of me. Ino paused, her excitement fading as she realized the truth of the situation. I see. Sorry for being insensitive about it. I just didn't think she'd ever tell you. It's fine. Naruto grinned, glancing back at Hinata when something occurred to him. So wait, did anyone get hurt fighting Satori? Ino nodded. Well yeah, Karabi the Hachibi Jinchuriki was thrashed pretty badly, but Lady Tsunade healed him right after. Shikamaru got a concussion from falling debris, but it wasn't bad. The only serious injury was Yamato. That monster could throw out its feathers like arrows the size of ballista bolts. Is Yamato alright? Yeah, he took one through the thigh. Tsunade healed that too as best she could, but he's still recovering. It nicked an artery so he lost a lot of blood. Naruto sighed and pulled a hand through his hair. I'm glad. As long as I was in the box, Satori would have continued to attack. I got out as quick as I could, but I wasn't sure if I'd been too late. You weren't Naruto-kun, Hinata assured him. The only one who was really in danger of dying was the infiltrator Kusa sent. But just as we were pulling her away from the box for Tsunade to heal, she started to recover on her own. No one knew why, though. With that monster attacking, we didn't have time to find out. Ryu-chan? She's here? Any lingering exhaustion was suddenly gone and he was out of bed, much to the shock of his friends. I have to see her. Where is she? Ino attempted to calm him. She's fine. Tsunade ran some tests on her and figured she was alright. She's staying somewhere in the village waiting for things to calm down in Kusa, at least enough for her to go back home. So she's alright? Yeah, I think so. Why do you care so much about her? How do you even know her? Naruto's jaw clenched as he recalled his time in Hazuka Castle. She was the only one who was there for me. If it wasn't for her, I'd be dead. Ino and Hinata both paled at his words, but he didn't give them a chance to ask why. I escaped the prison pretty easily on my second attempt, but I didn't realize that the seal Lord Mui put on me would burn me alive if I got too far from him. It activated just as I was about to leap into the water surrounding the island. I would have drowned if Ryu-chan hadn't been there to save me. Choji shifted, speaking for the first time. Sounds like she's important to you, Naruto. Of course she is. She's the one who kept me from going crazy. Without her, I wouldn't have had any hope of getting out of there. Not to mention she's one of the few people who haven't judged me for being what I am. Ino started to ask if he meant his status as a Jinchuriki, but she was interrupted again as the door to the room burst open. Kiba came in, followed by Tsunade, Sakura, Sai, and Guy's team. They all stopped as they saw him out of bed with Kakashi lying curled up on the floor. They stood still for a long moment, most of them trying to figure out why Kakashi was curled up in ball whining in pain. Naruto, on the other hand, his expression had been worried when they arrived. However, when he locked eyes with Tsunade, anger replaced everything else and his face turned to stone. Tsunade was the first to break the silence. Naruto. Tsunade. She stiffened, frowning. He never called her by her name before and he hadn't used this tone with her since Jiraiya's death. What's wrong, Gaki? Naruto's eye twitched, a vein popping out on his forehead in an almost comical manner. What's wrong? What's wrong? Is that all you have to say, you nagging old hag? Tsunade took a step back in shock, everyone around her doing the same as Naruto stepped towards her. Everything was boiling up on the inside. An eruption like he'd never had before. Is that all the fuck you can ask me after what you did? Naruto, I don't understand. What? You thought that I would just forgive you for having me locked up in a maximum security prison for almost half a year? Did you think I'm that fucking forgiving? Well, newsflash, Tsunade. There is a limit to the amount of bullshit I am willing to take, and let me tell you, I have had it up to here. Naruto's eyes flashed crimson as his expression twisted into a livid snarl. I have done more for this village than anyone since Shodem Hokage. I have taken all the scorn and hatred in stride. I've saved this miserable place twice. And that's not even including all the shit I've gone through that would have put any other ninja into retirement. Tsunade's eyes were all but bulging out of her skull at this point. Kiba and the others of the Rookie 12 were cowering away from him. Despite the fact that his anger wasn't directed toward them, it was like trying to stand in front of a hurricane. Naru, I don't want to hear it. Naruto roared. This is it. This is the last fucking time. Last warning. No ifs, ands, buts, no excuses, no reasons. You used me like a pawn, and I'm not going to accept it. Not after everything I've done for this place. He walked right up to her and stood on tiptoe, looking her right in the eye. You let me be accused of murder, in a village I don't even know how to get to, on information that was barely circumstantial at best. Then you give me no chance to prove my innocence and ship me off to a prison in the middle of nowhere. Naruto's hand grasped a fist full of her robes, wrenching her forward, their foreheads meeting with a loud crack. How do you think that was supposed to make me feel? I felt fucking betrayed, like I did everything I could think of to help you in this village and then you decided to throw me away like garbage. She tried to speak, but he backhanded her across the face. Silence descended across the room. Naruto, don't do this. His voice was like the crack of a whip. No. That's the last time I take orders from someone who treats me like some mental retard. I know I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I know that you're always joking about me not being the sharpest kunai in the set. Do you think I don't pay attention? Do you think that I'm deaf as well as dense? Shut up and let me finish. Her mouth snapped shut as he backed her into the wall. You act like everything in this world in an imposition on you, and that's just fine. But let me clue you in on something, Tsunade. I'm not forgiving. I don't let things go. I just push them aside. Every slight that this village has done to me? I remember every last one. The only reason I didn't let Gaara or Pain burn this village to the ground is because that would make me no better than the people who treated me like filth. Everyone watched as Naruto's eyes change. The blue disappearing, replaced by tarnished silver. But the inhuman rage was still there, burning like a white-hot inferno. I'm not even going to go into all the things that I had to deal with as a kid. I don't even think it matters anymore. But allow me to make a few things crystal clear. I am done being used. From now on, if there is something you want me to do, you better damn well explain what it is without keeping anything from me. Because if you pull another stunt like you did sending me to Hazuka Castle, and I will pack my things and leave. Naruto's voice was a knell, sending everyone into shock. Had he just threatened to leave Konoha? Tsunade swallowed past the lump in her throat. Naruto, I understand that you're angry. But there wasn't. What? Are you trying to say that I'm such a pathetic excuse for a ninja that I couldn't be given a hint as to what was going on? Because if that's what you're saying, I'd suggest you be a bit more fucking subtle. She gasped as Naruto's slitted pupils swirled, becoming a tiny purple pinprick within the silver of his eyes. Then one by one 6 black rings appeared around it. Everyone in the room saw it, and they couldn't believe what they were seeing. 3 things, Tsunade. Just 3 things am I going to say now. And then I'll leave the rest up to you. The rest? She asked lamely. Yeah, the rest. As in you give me what I want and I let the matter drop, at least until I decide whether or not to trust you again. His blazing sliver eyes narrowed and he began. First and foremost, while we're on the topic of information you've kept from me, I want you to release my heritage to the village tomorrow. And yes, I know exactly who my parents are. The Yondaime left an imprint of his consciousness in the Kyuubi's seal. When I lost control fighting Pain, he resealed it and explained everything to me. Tsunade's usually fair skin bleached white. Second, I want everything that I have coming to me from both sides of the family. My inheritance is long overdue, seeing how I turned 16 ages ago. And additionally, as recompense for withholding both my heritage and my inheritance from me for so long, you will provide me with one-on-one training from a master in whatever field I want, no questions asked. Naruto's anger seemed to peak then as he started in on his last demands. And finally, he growled. Since I've decided that I'm no longer going to serve as a non-profit charity, you can reimburse me for 4 months of wrongful imprisonment of a war hero in a maximum security prison. Something you did with every intention of using me, without my knowledge, as bait. And since I'm feeling really pissed off today, you can also reimburse me for the humiliation of being paraded through the streets of Konoha like some common thief for the villagers to leer at. The room was silent again, then Naruto's scowl deepened yet further. Actually, you know what? Scratch that last bit. I don't give a damn about the humiliation or everyone leering at me. But next time there's a triple S-class maniac trying to kill everyone, they better give a damned good reason to help. Tsunade didn't know how to respond to that. She was frozen, caught between anger and desperation and sorrow. But she knew she had to say something or risk turning Naruto against her permanently. Naruto, I'm so sorry. I don't care if you're sorry or not. Just do what I told you. Maybe then you can earn my trust and respect back. But, just once more, I'm going to warn you. Do anything like this again and you can kiss me and Konoha goodbye. After all, what would this place be without your grandfather's precious wool of fire? Naruto gave Tsunade one last withering look and then turned around, giving Kakashi another good kick as he went to sit on the bed. There he sat and crossed his arms, waiting for everyone else to digest what he'd said. He wasn't about to take a single word of it back. He'd thought long and hard about his life here in Konoha. And while his wrongful imprisonment wasn't nearly as bad as it could have been, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. From now on, Tsunade, Kakashi, and Konoha as a whole were at the top of his shit list. Now, they'd need to earn his respect. The room remained steeped in silence for at least 10 minutes. No one moved so much as an inch, and then without warning Neji smiled. I was wondering when his patience would run out. It's about time. Naruto glanced towards the Hyuga. You knew? Neji shrugged. I knew that you were an impossibility. No one can be absolutely forgiving to everyone and everything around them always. At least I didn't think anyone could. I've been waiting to see how long it took for you to crack. HMPH. Silence descended again for a brief moment, before at last Kiba spoke. Dude, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but can I ask how the hell you have the Rinnegan? That's easy. I used the box of paradise. Naruto's silver-rippled eyes locked onto Kiba, making the young Inuzuka heir squirm. Mui was the only one able to break the seal on the box. But once he did that, anyone was free to make a wish. But Sakura started. That girl, Ryuzetsu I think her name was. She said that Lord Mui used it to bring back his son? Naruto shook his head sadly. No, he didn't get to make his wish at all. I killed him before he had the chance. And besides, you have to actually go into the box to make a wish. Satori, the guardian of the box, probably thought it would be funny to take Muku's form to terrorize everyone. He glanced to the side where Ino had hesitantly raised her hand. What, so you wished to have the Rinnegan? Why? I mean, after everything with pain, I wouldn't think you'd want anything to do with it. You're wrong, Ino. I don't have any problem with the Rinnegan. No more than I have a problem with the Sharingan. It's not about the power they give you. It's how each individual uses that power. But why the Rinnegan? Naruto turned back to Sakura, who'd asked the question. Think Sakura? Nagato wasn't all that special a shinobi. Point in fact, he was a cripple who couldn't walk without help. All he had was the famous Uzumaki vitality and the Rinnegan. And yet he was strong enough to defeat most Kage. What kind of force would I be if I had the same eyes he had? Sakura blinked, but her confusion remained. I don't get it though. Why not wish for world peace or something like that? Or even bringing Jiraiya back to life, or anything else? Why wish for personal power? Because the box had limits. You couldn't wish for just anything. It had to be something finite. Nothing endless like immortality. It couldn't go against the wishes of the one who made the box. And it couldn't affect the box itself. I don't see how that. Naruto waved her off. But what was more important than all of that, was that the box would grant my wish exactly as I wanted. But that's also a problem. The box grants wishes as they are intended. How am I supposed to wish for peace if I have no idea how to bring peace myself? And bringing the dead back to life is against nature. I'm a sage for Kami's sake. The toads would disown me if I did that. She nodded unhappily and went silent, but this time Lee spoke. Naruto, can I ask why you didn't wish for something more important? For instance, being able to control the Kyuubi? Isn't that something that would give you more power than the Rinnegan? I'm not sure how strong I'd be if I could control the Kyuubi's chakra, but even if I would be stronger for it, I wouldn't have wished for it. I want to earn that power. The Kyuubi might be a big ball of hate, but I'm going to take that challenge on myself without taking the easy route. Neji raised one eyebrow in question. And the Rinnegan isn't taking the easy way? You said it yourself. That's merely a shortcut to power. Naruto shook his head. That's different. I could never have the Rinnegan. No matter how hard I train or what I do. But I actually think I can master the Kyuubi's hatred in time. Kiba's chuckle sounded more than a little awkward. Well, I mean, if you only get one wish, that's as good a thing to wish for as any. What's that make you? SS class by default? Who said I only got one wish? Everyone froze. To tell the truth, the box grants as many wishes as there are human sacrifice before its opening. Muku was the fourth sacrifice to the box before Mui opened it with my chakra. So, 4 wishes. Kiba, along with every other ninja in the room, stood in complete shock. The Rinnegan was actually my third wish, in case you were wondering. Then what was your first? Tenten blurted. Naruto gave a wicked little smile, knowing just how big a deal it really was. I wished for perfect chakra control, beyond even what Tsunade has. He glanced to the Hokage. Which, I might add, means that I can now use both medical ninjutsu and genjutsu. I'll have to learn how, of course, but that's what the lessons I demanded are for. Abruptly, Hinata and Neji activated their Byakugan. Neji blinked once, then twice, and finally 3 times before he could bring himself to speak. Well, I guess that's what perfect chakra control looks like. The closest I've seen anyone come to this was Chio from Suna, the puppet master who gave her life to save the case cage. And even then there's no contest. His chakra is so calm. Hinata muttered. But there's so much. It's like a still ocean. So what were your other wishes? Kiba still looked awestruck. I mean, between the Rinnegan and perfect chakra control, we minds as well just give you a flea on sight order like the Yondaime. Am I right? Naruto's eyes flashed and he glanced back towards Tsunade. Yeah, I guess you're right about that. At least once I master the Rinnegan, that is. Kinda funny. That would be only the second flea on sight order ever given to someone who wasn't already a cage. Anyo? Hinata shifted uncomfortably in her seat with Choji and Ino. Who were your parents, Naruto-kun? Why? You told Lady Tsunade that you wanted to tell everyone. The eyes of everyone in the room turned to the Hokage as Naruto frowned. Well, Granny, why don't you tell them? Tsunade was stiff as a board. Looking into Naruto's Rinnegan was like staring into the eyes of the Shinigami. And after being on the receiving end of the Rinnegan herself, she knew that wasn't far from the truth. And what choice was Naruto leaving her? If she didn't spill what she knew now, he'd probably never forgive her. Well, are you going to tell, or should I? Naruto frowned. Here's a hint. This is a chance to earn a little bit of forgiveness. Tsunade shifted uneasily. The truth would send the whole village into a panic. Naruto. Do you understand what would happen if people found out whom your parents were at this time? I can tell them, but unless you want to sending assassins after you. She trailed off, not wanting to finish the thought. Naruto glowered. Do you think I care about a handful of assassins, Tsunade? Nagato leveled most of the village with a single attack. I easily have 3 times as much chakra as he ever had. I could turn Iwa into a smoking crater. And what about your friends and family? Can you protect everyone else at the same time? There's a reason you weren't told, Naruto. They wouldn't dare. All you have to do is hint around that I have my dad's jutsu. Iwa wouldn't lay a finger on anyone. Besides, what does Iwa have to do with telling them? Naruto gestured to his fellow rookies. They aren't going to snitch to Iwa about my heritage. Well, he growled. Going once. Going twice. Fine. Tsunade stamped her foot and turned to address Naruto's friends. Naruto's father made many enemies when he was alive, and he decreed that his son's heritage be kept a secret until such a time as he was strong enough to protect himself. So I suppose it's long overdue to let it out. Go on, Granny. Naruto muttered. Don't keep us in suspense. She sighed. Naruto's mother was Kushina Uzumaki, the previous Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and his father was Minato Namikaze, who you all know as the Yondaime Hokage. Ino, Sakura, and Hinata fainted. Kiba, after letting out a bark of laughter, promptly followed. His head hit the floor with a dull thunk. Choji stared, robbed of both words and intelligent thought. Lee grinned, then frowned, then grinned again, as if having a hard time deciding whether this was youthful or not. At the same time, Shino's jaw, in a rare display of emotion, dropped. However, the most grand reaction by far came from the second member of Guy's team. Neji, seeming in a daze, turned around and started to slam his head into the wall. His furious muttering could be heard over and over again. His face in on the side of the fucking mountain. How did I not see the resemblance? And finally Tenten inserted her pinky finger into her ear and twisted it around. Then she asked, Would you mind repeating that, Hokage-sama? The last of the Senju drew in a deep breath and spoke again. Naruto is the son of an Uzumaki princess and the Yondaime Hokage. Tenten nodded as though this was what she thought she'd heard, then promptly turned on her heel. Well, I'll see you all another time. Send someone to get me when the world makes sense again. Without another word, she left. Those that remained, conscious at least, stared at Tsunade and then at Naruto, not knowing what to do or say. And what could they say to that? Cool? That's nice? Congratulations? Your father was one of the most powerful shinobi in living memory. Oh, and by the way, your life sucks? Naruto met Tsunade's gaze once more and broke the silence. I take it I'm free to leave? She nodded. He slipped off the bed and looked around, noting the pile of clothes by the other side of the bed. He walked around and grabbed them, then turned to address everyone. You guys probably need some time to adjust to all this, so I'll leave. If anyone needs me, I'll be at one of my usual hangouts. Tsunade stepped in front of the open doorway, blocking his path. Naruto, I know I have some making up to do. Some? Okay, a lot. But before you go around stirring up trouble, can you listen to me? Naruto considered it for a moment. Fine. What is it? We've rebuilt the village. Konoha has regained most of its strength while you were gone. However, if you go out there and blurt your heritage to the whole village, it would cause a panic. Not only that, but Iwi would have a bounty on your head larger than Orochimaru's and Jiraiya's put together by the end of the week. And regardless of you being powerful, that won't stop them from sending assassins after you or those you care about. 1 week. Tsunade blinked. What? You have 7 days to get everything prepared. Beef up the village's defenses, inform ranking officers of the situation, whatever you need to do. 1 week. Then whether it's a good idea or not, I'm telling the whole village exactly who I am. Thank you, Naruto. Yeah, you're welcome. Now if you're done, I have 4 months of not being miserable to catch up on. He brushed past her, walking into the hall outside. However, he stopped when something occurred to him. Oh, by the way, where is that Kusa Kunoichi who you brought back to Konoha? She frowned. She's currently in Ninja Housing Block CY. Because she's important to me and I'm going to make sure she's okay. Naruto shrugged. It really isn't any of your business. But Naruto didn't give her a chance to finish. He was already gone. Regret. Not 10 minutes after storming out of the hospital, he already felt guilt worming its way into him. Fuck, he'd been such an asshole. Sure, Tsunade had used him like a tool, but why had he felt the need to punish Kakashi for it? Hell, he was pretty sure he broke bones with that punch. Did his sensei really deserve that? For all he knew, Kakashi might have argued against the whole plan to frame him. It might have been a simple case of following orders. He couldn't fault the guy for that, right? Not when everyone else went along with it. Yamato obviously was in on it. As was Shizune, maybe even Sakura and Sai. None of them had said anything against it really, besides Sakura's half-hearted, probably feigned, concern for him. Grr, of course I have a right to be pissed off. If they really cared for me like they pretend to, then one of them would have disobeyed orders and told me what was really going on. Kakashi blatantly went against Tsunade before, so he must have been willing to go along with it. Naruto grimaced and ducked into an alley when he saw Kurenai Yuhi up ahead. He wasn't in the mood to talk to her at the moment. Damn it, guys. Why do you have to make it so hard to forgive you? I want to. I really do, but I just can't this time. You took it too far. His hands balled into fists as he struggled to get a handle on his anger. It wouldn't do to blow up in the middle of the village. If he had to, he'd go train. Hopefully that would blow off some steam. Maybe. Finally pulling himself together, he exited the alley and continued towards the main ninja housing block. C block held all Chunin and Genin who didn't have a clan or family to live with, or those who wanted to live alone yet lacked much in the way of money to purchase something bigger. It also held all allied shinobi and kunoichi living in the village. He hadn't really expected her to be here. Sure, Konoha and Kusa were neutral towards each other, but he'd thought she'd be put on the other side of town near the old Uchiha district. That's where the village housed foreign ninja who they didn't necessarily trust. Then again, he didn't know the exact circumstances of the plan Tsunade had put together with the Raikage. For all he knew, Ryuzetsu was already an established member of the grass fruit faction. If that was the case, she was probably being given sanctuary until the situation in Kusagakure resolved. I hope she's okay. I remember wishing for her to have an amazing healing factor. That wish better have worked. Naruto sped up as C block came into view. Worry was beginning to nag at him. The awful thought that for some reason Ryuzetsu might not be alright, that she might have suffered permanent damage somehow. Despite Ino's comment about her being fine. I don't know her room number. Damn it, should have asked. He paused, wondering how he would figure out which was her room. Then it occurred to him that he was being stupid. He could just use his new and improved Sage mode. With that in mind, he went still long enough to gather nature energy and get a sense for the world around him. Almost immediately he locked onto her chakra signature. She was only about 30 meters from him on the second floor. Good thing my Sage mode is so much stronger than it used to be. Hey, I can't wait to show this to the Toad Clan. They'll freak when they see it. He chuckled, most of his dread draining away when he felt Ryuzetsu's tranquil chakra brush against his. It was warm and calm. She was all right. Naruto breathed a sigh of relief and started into the apartment complex, heading for her room. A brief walk followed, although he got a few odd looks from shinobi he passed. But apparently none of them thought his sudden return to the village was anything to worry about, so he didn't stop. A minute later he was standing outside the door to her apartment. Without hesitating, he raised his hands to knock, rapping the wood hard enough for it to echo throughout the room beyond. After a moment he was able to make out footsteps coming closer along with a nearly inaudible grumbling. A smile curled the corners of his lips as he heard a click and the door swung inward. And there she was, no longer wearing prison clothes or even ninja gear. Instead she was wearing a white button-up blouse and a short emerald green skirt. He swallowed hard and failed to stop his eyes wandering over her. Damn, she didn't look anything like what he remembered. It was as if she was a completely different person. The tomboy look was gone. Vanished like it had never been, and if his eyes weren't deceiving him, an effort of will was required to force his mind not to focus on the fact that she must have bound her ass before. Because there was no way in hell those had been hiding under her clothes back in Hazuka Castle. Naruto rubbed the back of his head, grinning as he did his best not to ogle her. Hey Ryu-chan, mind if I come in? Ryuzetsu's pale blue eyes blinked once. Then, as if suddenly recognizing the blonde in front of her for who he was, she lunged for him. Naruto, you're okay? Naruto staggered back even as he wrapped his arms around her slim waist. He was a little too conscious of her lithe form against his, and now that she was this close, her scent as well. He could feel his face heating up even as he inhaled the flowery smell of her perfume. Cammy, he'd been thinking about doing this for weeks. And she doesn't seem to mind. Maybe she wouldn't mind if I. He couldn't help it. His stomach was churning wildly and he wanted to see how she would react. He let his head drop and kissed the top of her head, holding her even more tightly as he did so. The lovely Kusa Jonin in his arms stiffened, then relaxed. Naruto? He felt her hands linked together behind his broad back. Would you mind if I did something that will probably get me expelled from my home village? He swallowed hard before answering. No, not at all. Good. Naruto didn't have time to say anything more. One moment she was embracing him, and the next her lips were on his. He froze for several seconds, not knowing what to do. Then almost as soon as the kiss began, it ended. He looked down into Ryuzetsu's baby blue eyes and found words coming unbidden to his lips. That didn't seem like it would get you in trouble. Ryuzetsu smiled, taking his hand in hers and guiding him into her apartment. No. She closed the door behind him and pressed in close. But what comes next will? He wasn't sure he knew what to say to that. But, what exactly is going to come next? Ryuzetsu didn't answer for a moment. Her long strides took her to a smallish bed in the corner of the room where she sat down. Her gaze focused on him for a while before dropping to the floor. Naruto, I know this seems sudden. It's just that I've been carrying around this weight for so long. Muku was everything to me when I was younger. He was my inspiration, my best friend, even my teacher. And when he died, a part of me was trapped with him. Ryu-chan. He couldn't stop himself. He crossed the room and dropped down next to her. And although he wasn't terribly good at comforting others, he did his best. He didn't expect her to turn her head and kiss him again. It was a soft kiss, almost a caress. Full of emotion yet seeming restrained. Ryuzetsu's hand found the side of his face as their eyes met. You are the only one I've ever cared for as much as Muku. I'm not sure when I stopped seeing you as an impulsive idealistic idiot, but I can't seem to help it. Even in such short a time. Her eyes failed to meet his again as she dredged up words to explain her feelings. I've fallen in love with that goofy smile and your stupid verbal tick, and your oversized hero complex. Maybe it's stupid. After all, what could an elite jonin like me possibly like about all that? Hey, she held a finger to his lips, still smiling. Shut it, I'm trying to have a moment here. Naruto closed his mouth, keeping his eyes locked on hers as he waited for her to continue. And after seeming to collect herself, she did. I don't know how to say this without it seeming rushed or illogical. And if I'm honest with you, I don't care. I'm in love with you, Naruto Uzumaki. I'm in love with you even though we've known each other for less than 6 months. Even though most of it was spent in a prison. Ryuzetsu's cheeks flushed red and she leaned forward, all but crawling into his lap. What I meant before, Naruto, is that I'm going to give myself to you. Naruto felt the breath catch in his throat as she unbuttoned her blouse and let it fall, whispering past his ear as it drifted to the floor. My village won't let me return if I have divided loyalties. So for better or worse, I'm yours. He didn't know what to say, what to do. Hell, he barely knew what to think. If he was being truthful, he'd become somewhat infatuated with her. But for her to say that she was his? It both scared and excited him. He'd always wanted someone to love him. And here she was offering everything he'd always desired. Could he possibly say no? No, he couldn't. Ryuzetsu licked her lips and twined her arms around his neck. Naruto-kun, don't be gentle. This might be my first time. But I want it to be real. Ryu-chan. She kissed him again. No more words. Her tongue darted out, teasing his lips, and this time he didn't stand idly by. Naruto leaned into it, kissing her hard and relishing the contact. He didn't know what he was doing. Not in the least. The kiss was sloppy and he was sure he could have done better. So as their hands continued exploring each other, he let his body move on instinct. Before he knew it, his jacket was gone. Ryuzetsu had tugged it off, not even bothering to undo the zipper. Some part of him was shouting that this was going too fast. That this couldn't be real. That he wasn't good enough. The snap of the zipper tearing free distracted him for only a second before his attention was riveted to her ass. Ryuzetsu's bra landed by the foot of the bed, but Naruto didn't notice. He was too busy staring transfixed at her perfection. Her dusky skin was flushed and her nipples, oddly pink against her darker skin, were captivating. He didn't even notice the coolness of the room until he felt the heat of Ryuzetsu's body against his. Likewise, he didn't realize she'd removed his shirt until he felt her hands ghosting down his spine. He shuddered. His stomach was doing flips all of a sudden and he felt naked. No, he almost was naked. He hadn't really been aware of it happening. Ryuzetsu's clothes, on the other hand. He was very aware of how she lost them. Her skirt didn't stand a chance. As soon as he managed to snap himself out of his trance, he tore it off and flung it to the side. Him down to her level and stealing another passionate kiss from him. It blindsided him again, leaving him completely at her mercy. Just the heat and desire she poured into it was enough to wipe his mind clean of intelligent thought. His pants were a bit trickier. But Ryuzetsu's impatience wouldn't allow them to remain any longer. Scant seconds after she pulled him down, the tattered remains of his pants were kicked off the bed to join her bra and skirt. Then they were down to the bare basics. She seemed to take great pleasure in making him squirm as she removed her last article of clothing, leaving her bare to the world. Or at least bare to him. That's what mattered. He just didn't know what he was supposed to do next. Well, scratch that. He did know. Jiraiya had made damn sure he'd be prepared for this kind of situation. But still, he didn't know how to go forward. Naruto, you're nervous, right? He nodded. Yeah, then let me take the lead, okay? He nodded again, not trusting himself to speak. Ryuzetsu didn't either. She merely pushed him down into the bed. Relax, we have all the time in the world. Naruto swallowed hard. Ryu-chan? Yes? She paused, head tilting to the side. Aren't you worried about, He wasn't sure how to say it without just saying it. Getting pregnant? I know sensei always told me to be sure, and I know you can't be on the pill, right? Ryuzetsu's smile made his heart stop for almost half a minute before any hesitation melted away. Her lips quirked into a delighted grin as she leaned down, whispering past his ear. If it happens, it happens. But, she placed a finger over his lips. Naruto, I've completed my mission. I have no reason to be a kunoichi any longer. Besides, I wouldn't mind. You wouldn't? He was more than shocked. He was astonished. You would want that? I told you already. Some might think this is happening too quickly. Some will say I don't really love you. But I know how I feel and I know what I want. If you give me a child? Well, I've always wanted to be a mother. Naruto saw something in her eyes. Something like devotion. He didn't know what he'd done in their handful of months together to earn such love. Maybe it was just him being him. Maybe there was something about him that drew them together. But hearing her say that, it tore down any wall his logical mind could have erected. He couldn't help but smile right back as desires came unbidden from the deepest reaches of his mind. I've always wanted a family too. Ryuzetsu leaned down further, her silver hair falling down to create a sheltered world just for the two of them. Then let's get started. Their lips met again and Naruto found himself lost in her passion and lust. For the rest of the day and well into the night, no more words would be spoken between them. At least not intelligible ones. It was 5 in the afternoon and Tsunade Senju's office was packed to bursting. Jonin from every corner of the village had been called in to attend a special meeting. Those already there included the likes of Hiyashi Hyuga along with every other clan head, Kurenai Yuhi with the other Jonin team leaders, and the vast majority of the current Anbu squad captains. All told, nearly 50 men and women were crammed into the large office. And still none of them knew what was going on. For the last half an hour the Hokage had been sitting at her desk with a scowl etched into her features. Not so much as a word had been spoken. At least until the door opened one final time and Kakashi Hitaki, looking a little beat up, entered the room with Tenzo by his side. Finally Tsunade spoke. "Listen up everyone and listen well. I've called this meeting to address several matters that will be of paramount importance in the coming weeks and months." Her gaze swept the ninja clustered around her, taking in the serious expressions of everyone present. Last week Naruto Uzumaki returned to the village and today he was released from the hospital. I know many of you think this is going to make your lives easier. There was mixed muttering around the room, most of it in agreement. After all, Naruto was being considered for an S-class official ranking in Konoha's ninja registry. With that kind of firepower back in the village they'd be stronger than ever. After a minute or so Yuago Izuki, one of the village's top Anbu, stepped forward. "The village owes Uzumaki-san a debt. I would assume Hokage-sama, that this meeting has been called because of something involving him." "You are correct." She closed her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath before continuing. "As some of you know, Naruto was selected to infiltrate Hizuka Castle to find and destroy the Box of Paradise, an artifact of terrible power from a time before the Sage of Six Paths. And his mission was in large part successful. The Aburame clan had adjusted his glasses, his usually neutral features becoming pinched. We know some details of the mission, Hokage-sama. What does it have to do with this meeting?" Tsunade's grimace set everyone on edge. "It has everything to do with this meeting. Mainly because Naruto is livid that he wasn't told about the mission beforehand. I admit I made a mistake in sending him there unknowing. Now Naruto has decided to put his foot down." Hiyashi Hyuga crossed his arms over his chest, sending Tsunade a disapproving stare. "I told you such a deception would not go over well. The boy is forgiving, yet given his background it was foolish to put him in a situation where he might think you betrayed his trust. I realize that now, Hiyashi. Rubbing it in isn't necessary." "And how did he react exactly?" Inoichi frowned. "I can't imagine him being too angry with us. Furious would be a better word. There's a reason why Kakashi is nursing half a dozen broken ribs." All eyes turned to Kakashi, who scratched the back of his head sheepishly. "What can I say? He caught me with my guard down. I'm lucky I'm up and walking right now." They returned their attention to their Hokage, who continued where she left off. "I suppose there is some good news in this. However, it's overshadowed by the problems that come along with it." She forestalled any questions with a wave of her hand and lifted a large yellow file folder for them to see. "Naruto has demanded that I release his inheritance to him. Legally there is nothing I can say against it. Although I am Hokage, when it comes to matters of inheritance the clan laws take precedence. As such I am required to honor his request." One of the Anbu in the room gave Tsunade a perplexed look. "You mentioned an inheritance? I knew the boy is the heir to the Uzumaki, however I wasn't aware we salvaged enough from Uzushiogakure for him to have an inheritance. That is part of the issue." Tsunade looked rather uncomfortable now, her expression pained. Hiyashi's eyes narrowed as he made the connections in his mind. "Please X." A look of dawning comprehension suddenly made the Hyuga clan head trail off. "Hokage-sama, you lied to us. Hiyashi, sit down." Hiyashi didn't retake his seat. On the contrary, his gray eyes narrowed to livid slits. I had always assumed that the boy was an orphan refugee. The Sandame never hinted that there was anything special about the boy past being the last of his clan. However, the boy shouldn't have an inheritance unless his parents left him something. And since you say it's a clan matter. Yes, Naruto is Kushina Uzumaki's son, as well as being a close relation to my grandmother, the Shodame's wife. His inheritance is made up of everything Kushina made during her career as a kunoichi and fuinjutsu master for Konoha. A not insubstantial sum of money. Also, given that my grandmother Mito owned a large portion of property within the village, which was not transferred into the Senju clan holdings, that too will fall to Naruto. Whispers broke out among the Jonin and Anbu while the clan heads remained silent. Although some like Hiyashi were quietly steaming for being lied to. But there was still more to tell. However, despite everything that's been revealed so far, the real reason for this meeting has nothing to do with the Uzumaki clan. Nor any clan at all. In fact, it concerns a small civilian family that acted as merchants during the First and Second Great Wars. the Namikaze family, or as it came to be known after Minato Namikaze was named the Yondaime, the Namikaze clan. Shikaku Nara fell out of his seat in shock as he, along with many others, realized exactly what their cage was getting at. But Tsunade didn't give them any change to get their bearings. Instead, she plunged bravely on, attempting to say everything that needed said before the meeting dissolved into a chaotic shouting match. Apparently the Yondaime left an imprint of his consciousness inside the seal holding the Kyuubi within Naruto, and the boy now knows everything about his heritage. It would have happened regardless seeing how he's come of age, and I was planning on promoting him upon his return to Konoha. However, he has decided that he won't tolerate it being kept a secret, regardless of the reason. Her eyes raked over the Jonin and Anbu. Naruto's heritage will be released to the village in 1 week. And if we aren't prepared by then, they didn't need her to say it aloud. If Konoha wasn't prepared in 1 week, you would have every assassin their side of the elemental nations after the last Namikaze. And countless innocents would be caught in the crossfire. With that in mind, I'm recalling all Anbu from active missions outside the village. Standard teams will limit their missions to those within High no Kuni. Jonin not assigned to a team while running patrols around our borders and beefing up security here in the village. Hokage-sama, one of the senior Jonin from the back of room, stepped forward. Have you spoken with the boy? Would he not see the reason in keeping his heritage secret a little longer? Naruto is impulsive, and despite his youth he is far more powerful than I am. I will not risk his loyalty at this time, especially when he's threatened to leave the village if I don't comply. Tsunade eyed the man sternly. Surely you can see my awkward position. He nodded slowly and stepped back. The other Jonin seemed to fall into deliberation amongst themselves while the Anbu in the room stood silently, waiting to be dismissed. Tsunade noticed this and turned to them. All Anbu save the captains and current commander may return to your duties. The dozen or so senior Anbu bowed before disappearing in a mass shunshin. In the wake of their departure, Chosen Akamichi shifted next to Inoichi. Hokage-sama, I understand that Naruto has become powerful, but does he truly understand what his threat to leave the village means? If the civilian population found out, I understand that, Tsunade snapped, but as of now there's nothing I can do. Nothing at all? She sighed and leaned back in her chair, lacing her fingers before her. I have not told you everything. And what I'm about to say is to be kept in the strictest of confidence. In fact, unless Naruto chooses to reveal it himself, I consider this an S-class village secret. The clan head, remaining Anbu, and Jonin all nodded. Tsunade watched them for a few moments before continuing. It is mentioned in the mission report that Naruto was inside the box of paradise for some time. However, until Naruto woke, we didn't know the consequences of that. However furious Naruto was, he did share that information with me. She trailed off, wondering how best to break the news of Naruto's new abilities. And? Hiyashi inquired. What happened? The box of paradise apparently grants wishes. Not just one, but multiple. One for each human sacrifice before its opening if what Naruto said is true. And it gave Naruto 4 wishes. He told me that each wish had certain limits and that they worked according to his own interpretation. Therefore he couldn't choose something like immortality or world peace. She closed her eyes. So, he decided it would be safest to wish for personal power. Inoichi frowned. If he were anyone else, I'd be extremely worried about that. May we know what exactly he wished for? Tsunade nodded. Perfect chakra control was the first choice. And not a bad one at that. But it's the third wish that truly worries me. Everyone watched as the Hokage reached under her desk and pulled out a large file. A file some of them even recognized. It was a wild folder with an eye drawn on the front. It was the file that had been compiled on Pain, or as they now knew him, Nagato. Naruto wished for the Rinnegan. Tsunade paused the folder across her desk for Hiyashi to pick up. And given the abilities it grants alone, Naruto would immediately be under consideration for sulfur monosulfide class. However, with Jinchuriki chakra levels, perfect chakra control, and his Uzumaki blood? She locked eyes with Hiyashi even as he glanced up at her. Naruto Uzumaki has joined the ranks of the legends Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju. The Anbu commander stepped up behind Hiyashi, glancing over the contents of Nagato's folder as he asked, "Have you seen it?" "I have. It looks just like Pain's." "Then we have our work cut out for us." He turned to his subordinates. I believe it's time to take our leave, Hokage-sama. I will bring a report to you tomorrow. For now I bid you good day. He bowed and the remaining Anbu the same way as the first group. Tenzo smiled at Tsunade and gave a short bow as well. I need to be going. There are still some repairs that need to be made around the village and I'm the best man for the job. I'll see you at the council meeting tomorrow at well. She nodded and waved him off. Very well. What about you? The remaining clan heads seemed to contemplate their response for a long while, obviously shocked by the revelation of Naruto's new abilities. Eventually Inoichi pinched the bridge of his nose, signaling in some part the resignation they all felt. Hokage-sama, as glad I am that Naruto is on our side. I can't help but feel these new powers of his might go to his head. He's not even 17 yet. The Shoden didn't make himself a name as the shinobi no kami until his late 20s. And even then he grew up in war times. Naruto is a decent boy, but not necessarily wise for his age, Chozen muttered half-heartedly. His heart is in the right place. Although I for one don't distrust him, the Rinnegan seems a bit much. Now. Hiyashi drew their attention with a wave of his hand. Let's not be so quick to say what the boy can and cannot handle. If you'll remember, I thought my daughter would never make Chunin, yet she nearly made Jonin in the last exam. Worse luck for her that she was forced to fight Neji a second time. He threw a sharp glance Chozen's way. I personally thought your son would drop out of the academy. He had even less aptitude for our ways than my daughter. Well, Chozen coughed once as if clearing his throat. My son has advanced beyond that point. He's now a competent Chunin. Then why assume the Uzumaki boy will use his newfound power poorly? He saved this village using the Kyuubi's power for a good portion of the battle. If he can turn the demon's power to a noble cause, then a dujutsu, no matter how powerful it may be, shouldn't be an issue. You just want the boy to marry your daughter in the hope that his new eyes will pass on to their children. Hiyashi's smile was equal measures grim and satisfied. That's a motive. His eyes flicked to Tsunade. However, a dujutsu doesn't make you arrogant or evil. The Uchiha's arrogance came from their strength and love of tradition. We Hyuga are often seen as overbearing because we put so much faith in our eyes. Yet Naruto is no Hyuga. Nor is he an Uchiha. He will not take his eyes for granted as so many natural-born dujutsu users do. Tsunade grumbled under her breath, but couldn't find the will to disagree. Very well. You've made your point. I don't think he'll misuse them either. But damn it if they won't complicate things. Even assuming he uses them only to protect others, there's so much to consider. If I may make a suggestion, then Hokage-sama. Go on, wait for the boy's eyes to be discovered in the natural course of things. Then announce publicly that it's a new bloodline awakened in the Uzumaki clan. Won't that cause us more problems? Kidnapping attempts would be the least of our worries. Hiyashi nodded, yet those would take place regardless. That last Uzumaki, that's not something which will go unnoticed. However, telling the world the Uzumaki clan has the Rinnegan will do two things for us. First, it will cement Konoha as the undisputed most powerful village even after the recent attack. No one would dare challenge a village that holds a Jinchuriki Rinnegan wielder. Shikaku chuckled. It would be suicide. Plain and simple. Yes, it will make Konoha untouchable. At least for a time. However, this is only secondary to the main benefit. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. Which is, Konoha will be guaranteed alliances with half a dozen villages, both major and minor, who will clamor to have even the slightest chance of possessing its power. Even our enemies wouldn't hesitate to make temporary peace for the opportunity to lure Naruto to their side. He gave a very un-Hyuga-like grin. But as we all know, Naruto is loyal to his friends and family. We will reap all the benefits without worrying about losing him to another village. Inoichi sniffed. So long as we inform him of our intentions. The boy has made it clear he won't be used as a pawn any longer. I for one think we should be careful of provoking him further. I never said to keep it from him. In fact, ask him if he'd be willing to help. If he could manage to put on an act of the disgruntled Jinchuriki, keeping those who want to seduce him to their side invested, it would help our cause. Indeed. However, I think you're all ignoring Boss Summon in the room. Hiyashi, along with the others, turned to Shikaku. The Nara clan head was leaning back in his chair, his words belying his bored expression. What will we do about the marriage proposals? If we make it out to be that the Rinnegan has manifested in the Uzumaki clan, you know the kid will be swarmed in no time. Inoichi groaned at that. He's right, they'll come out of the woodwork. Girls offering to help rebuild his clan as a way to get close to him. Allies wanting to steal him away from us by presenting their best and brightest. You never know. The boy is 16. He's at that age. Never know when he might take a liking to one of them. Hiyashi's eye twitched. Point. Another one then, Inoichi continued. Just because they're trying to seduce him to their side, that doesn't mean there won't be nice girls out there. Mabui of Kumo for instance. An experienced Jonin. Beautiful. Known for her generous and kind disposition. And just young enough to be an option. There are many out there who could catch his attention. Chosen cast a sideways glance towards the stoic Hyuga. And didn't you say your daughter confessed to him during Pain's attack? He hasn't answered her yet to my knowledge. Who knows? He traveled with Jiraiya of all people for 2 years. He might already have his eye on some foreign girl. That is understandable, Hiyashi admitted. Yet I must ask why you're insinuating he'd take one wife. Well, Chosen blinked. That's a good point. Hokage-sama, how is the law concerning polygamy? Wasn't it abolished by the Nindem? Only for a time. When the Second Great War started he realized the clans couldn't keep up with the number of deaths. As long as a clan has less than 3 members polygamy is accepted. But only for 1 generation. Tsunade scowled. Actually I tell a lie. From a legal standpoint anyone can take multiple wives. It's just a matter of getting approval from the local authority. The daimyo in this case. But he's a traditionalist. Getting permission would be like pulling teeth. Hiyashi's smile returned. Last of his clan, possesses a legendary dujutsu, and the son of a kage. I'm sure the daimyo would make an exception. Remember Hiyashi, you may fancy marrying your daughter off to him for political gain. However Naruto has never been like Jiraiya. He might not be interested in taking multiple wives. His father didn't. I'll keep that in mind Hokage-sama. Good. Tsunade slammed her hand down on the table. Now to other matters. Which of you brats is going to help me with the political shitstorm on the horizon? The 4 clan heads swallowed audibly and Hiyashi, ever the wise one, made for a quick getaway. Shikaku was already gone. Inoichi turned out to be a clone. Tsunade grinned. Well Akamichi, looks like you're the lucky winner. It had taken hours. 6 blissful passionate hours, but it was finally over. Naruto hadn't wanted it to end, but it had. And now he found himself intertwined with Ryuzetsu upon her narrow but comfortable bed. Their breaths were only now slowing down from ragged gasps. Surprisingly he was the worse for wear. He'd never dreamed that he'd find someone who had as much stamina as he did, yet Ryuzetsu hadn't disappointed. Despite his status as a Jinchuriki she'd given as good as she got. And Kami-sama he was going to sleep good tonight. And maybe the bite marks his lover had left would fade by morning. Not that he'd mind if they didn't. He'd left a few of his own. Haha. Naruto shifted slightly as Ryuzetsu's lips brushed his collarbone. She was muttering something under her breath. He couldn't quite make it out, but there was something about Kusa in there. That's right. She said something about Kusa before we got started. Man, I can't even begin to remember what it was though. Guess that memory got overridden. Arrow send and eat your heart out. My first time took hours. Naruto nuzzled in closer to his girl and tightened his arms around her. His own breathing slowed, until at last he drifted off to sleep. It wasn't long before 2 blue eyes opened and focused on him. Ryuzetsu smiled and, after contemplating for quite some time, let them close again. She could use the contraceptive jutsu, but she'd told him the truth. The idea of carrying his child was not unappealing. A low chuckle escaped her. She would let things happen as they would. Regardless of what the future might have held she would be staying by Naruto's side. That, as he would have said, was the promise of a lifetime. Not to Naruto, but to herself. My past, Muku, Mui, and that damned box. It's all finally behind me. From now on, the only chains that bind me will be the ones I choose myself. With that parting thought she allowed herself to drift off, never once considering what chaos her decision would lead to. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.